Welcome to the special Tuesday night edition, January 22nd Zoning Advisory Committee meeting. So, our agenda for tonight, we have a few items to discuss that we're still hoping, if we agree on the wording of any of these tonight, we can still present them to the planning board next Monday, and the planning board has time to get them onto the warrant this year for the town meeting. As far as the ones that we sent forward already, planning board decided, they did have some questions about some of them, but they decided to put them all forward for the public hearing that they hold in February or early March. So, they thought that they were, reasonable to have the public comment on. So, all right.
And then what happens from there before it gets approved to be on the town meeting?
Okay, so it goes through the public hearing, and then the planning board votes on each one. And they're already technically on the warrant right now, but then they can remove them from the warrant if they decide after the public hearing to do so. Okay. All right. So, the first item on our agenda is changing the bylaw to remove prohibition on municipal trash collection for garden apartments and village housing developments. This was requested by Mr. Garabedian, in writing as well as in person last time. Elaine laid out a nice outline of where we stand right now with these developments, and she listed all the developments right now that do not have municipal trash collection. So all in all, it would be about 1,000 units. The approved under Osmud is another 1,000 units when complete. Is that, those also do not have municipal trash collection, is that correct? Okay. So none of these, so it would be 2,000 units if we were to include all of them in, a new ruling. So. And although I did read all of this, Elaine, if you could just clarify for us, the rules are outlined not only in some of the definitions of different types of these developments, but also in some of the special permits and so on that each individual development received. Is that correct?
That's correct. For the garden apartment bylaw, so that prohibition has been in effect since 1970. And so I haven't gone back to research all the decisions, but I know that in a few of them at least, that prohibition is repeated in the decision. So in addition to removing the impediment in the zoning, the entity with jurisdiction would also have to go back and amend the special permit. It also appears in comprehensive permits, so a number of these developments were approved by comprehensive permit from the Board of Appeals under 40B, and that's also an impediment to trash collection that would have to be reversed if those developments were to receive trash collection as well. The Osmond is a little bit different. Okay. That's got a host community agreement and a separate zoning section. But I could see the time when those residents say, hey, all the other condominiums have it, why don't we too?
Right.
So,
okay. Any comments?
So there's some layers depending on how the development was approved and under what bylaw and by what special permit during what time frame, and the entity who approved it, it may or may not appear again in a decision.
And a zoning bylaw change would only apply to future developments. Is that right?
It would, however, that impediment is removed, and in the future, when the town has a different contract with E.L. Harvey, it could include trash collection for multifamily. Right now, that contract does not include trash collection for multifamily.
Okay.
I think more than units don't have pickup.
Yep. All right.
And there's no trash collection for commercial.
Okay. Comments?
Does anybody have any sense on whether the assessor takes into consideration that their trash collection is on the owners rather than the town for these garden apartments as opposed to single-family homes?
No, so a person's tax bill is based on the value of your home. And so that's the only assessment that's used, is the value of your real estate.
Right, but
We don't have a menu of, when you receive a tax bill, there isn't a menu of services you wish to have and don't, so that if you don't have children in the school system, for example, you still pay taxes to support the school system.
Yes?
Go ahead.
Carol?
Do you know how many, Elaine, how many of these places are not trash collection, but dumpsters situations?
I don't know.
Because that, in reading it, like our trash pickup is based on picking up trash cans. So in addition to adding the, the additional properties, we would also, I think, if we opted to try and do something along these lines, have to also add a system by which to empty dumpsters at some of these properties. Because some of them are, I know Apple Hill at least is a dumpster property. It's not a individual trash can at each locale. And I would also ask if there is there any sort of town liability issue if they are private roads and private property?
There's no trash pickup on private roads.
But, for instance, Davenport Village is a private road.
So all of that trash would have to come out front,
Okay.
is what I understand it from DPW director, that the
They would have to
contractor
haul
does
it down
not
to
use
Hayden
private
Row?
roads, does not go down private roads.
But if it
Also-
became a public road, that wouldn't automatically mean that then we would start to do trash pickup there. It doesn't, it's not linked.
No, and they can't become public roads.
Right,
They're not laid
okay.
out as streets, so they're not streets, they're only driveways.
I see, okay.
And I did ask DPW Director John Westerling whether the town is required to have municipal trash pickup, and it's not. So there's no requirement for the community to pick up trash at all, curbside.
Do we have a sense of what this is going to cost for 2,000 units?
I don't.
Any comments?
Because that's what's currently the issue, and then future.
Right.
I don't know if there's like more efficiencies with Harvey picking up more, but whatever the
It's usually
cost
based on
is.
tonnage.
Yeah, oh, okay. So no efficiency.
Sounds like this is a multi-faceted issue. It's certainly not just a zoning bylaw issue. And I don't think that, my personal opinion, I don't think we should take this up. So, thoughts?
I would agree.
I also agree. I'd like
Okay.
know more information about about why this was decided initially.
We
Costs.
can certainly leave it on our work plan and take it up later in the year and start to examine some of the issues after we've, dealt with some other items on our list. See if it has merit. But, yeah.
my issue is, from an equity standpoint, people buying these units should have known at the time of purchase that there was no municipal pickup, and that was part of their purchase decision initially, that this unit at this price is a good deal based on this. If we now impose upon the town the responsibility for picking up that trash, the initial people that got in there kind of got a good deal, and that the extra cost is going to be spread over the rest of the town.
Yeah, and I think that that's why we would have to look at the issue as, what's the trade-off? What can they pay per, I don't know, per,
I think there's probably something also in the zoning that there was a trade-off in the way the property was allowed to be built. And in
And that it
exchange
wasn't
for
added
that,
to
it's a
our-
private road and they pay this. And the developer chose to develop the property under that bylaw. He accepted that. It's like, to me, it's like if you buy a condo, you agree to pay condo fees from now until the day you die. So it's sort of, in my mind, the same thing. You go into a situation, this is the situation, you pay for your own private trash pickup, and this is the deal you get. You either say, yes, I want to do that, or no, I don't want to do that.
Well, I'm thinking then that there might be some bargain cost to have these developments add on to our contract.
That's what I'm
Versus
thinking, too.
going to a separate private contract. Because I remember one of the places I lived, I had to have a private contractor. And I know it was expensive for me because I was one person.
Right.
But if I was combined with other people, the cost per unit was down. And maybe there's some way we could introduce the idea, especially at the planning board level, that there might be some way to piggyback.
That would be great, but as far as like the residents on Davenport, I don't.
No, the existing, I don't
them
see
pulling
any
their trash
changing.
cans down to
Well,
80
not
Rock.
only that, you don't want to look at that, which is part of my issue.
You might as well just drop your trash on the way
I
out.
mean, it's not nice, it's just, it's unfortunate, but, so, yeah, so I think that if there's some way we can help the future, I don't know how you do, because it's too complicated, whether it's built into the way they were permitted.
Right. But I think you've got an item that, you know, that we'll be able to expand on, and we can look into it at least in the future.
I think it'd be interesting to know how many of these, housing development, how many of them actually want municipal trash pickup, because I'm thinking of Indian Brook having, trash truck go down the road to all those different condos and all these, individual condo owners having to be responsible for getting their trash out and where they keep the trash cans, so, so we heard from one person who, maybe he represents a lot of people, but I don't know how many of these condo owners are not happy with the situation they have, so.
Right.
So public hearing, feedback.
Yep. Could be something in the future. Okay, let's move on. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the maximum size of retail uses in Industrial A and Industrial B districts. So currently limited to 2,000, is that right?
Yes.
Yes, currently limited to 2,000 in both Industrial A and Industrial B. And is this by right? Currently?
That was the request.
Okay, the request was to increase the size and put it by right. Okay. Any thoughts, comments?
What is by right today?
By right, it is by right,
Yeah,
but it's only up to 2,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what are the thoughts on this?
I'm in favor of increasing it to 5,000. I'm not sure that it's going to make a meaningful difference one way or the other, but if it does bring some additional revenue to the town by having something go in, I would be in favor of it.
Do you know how big, just because I have a difficulty, picturing things in my head, how big is the CVS square footage wise?
Typically, CVS's are 14,500 square feet.
The
But ours is small, I
ex-Colella's?
think, right?
The Lex Colella's, I think, was about that size with the Marty's.
Okay,
So it could be a little bit less.
but that's about
But
50.
yeah, I mean, that's,
So it might be half the size of the Cololla CVS, 5,000 feet.
A third, closer to a third, I think.
Well, but she said it's with the Marty's included.
yeah,
so-
the building.
Is about 15,000?
I think that the full building is over 14,000 feet. But as far as trying to get to, you understand what 5,000 feet looks like? Trying to think of what would be a good choice. Well, the 110 grill is 4,800 feet.
Including the kitchen.
Yeah.
So 2,000 square
Thereabouts.
feet is pretty tiny. It's a really
Well-
small.
I think it depends on what we want to encourage to be in those districts.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a lot bigger than the country farms. So if that's, I don't,
Yeah.
you know, I think we need to talk about what kind of uses we're looking to get into those district in that retail space. It's not going to be a Walmart, it's not going to be a big box store, it's not going to be this or that, but it's bigger than a convenience store. So what are we looking to encourage down there?
Well, even convenience stores are getting bigger now. You know, when you look at all the gas stations and how much bigger they're getting. You know, the one that's, you know, they just bought up Cliff's House. That's going to be like 3 or 4 times bigger than it is now.
Elaine, what is the process if someone were to want to put a retail establishment in that is larger now? Could they go for a special permit? Would it be a variance, or would it be just not even a possibility?
It would be a variance, but it's unlikely that they could meet the statutory requirements for a variance, having to do the shape, soils, and topography of the lot.
Okay. So what if we were to, say under the special, say under the industrial A, industrial B districts as a special permit, to go up to, 10,000, 15,000 square feet. But they'd have to go through the special permit process.
Well, if I may, through the chair, one of the things that we're trying to do, again, there's 2 reasons for zoning, to try and encourage or discourage. Now, there are members of this committee that believe that people don't mind going through a litigation in order to open up a business. But especially for a business as small as...
Litigation,
Not
though.
litigation.
I think that's...
Harsh.
Yes.
Well, no, it still is. You still have to get a lawyer. It's this legal.
It's not
Even going to
litigation.
ZBA is still legal.
It's not litigation.
It's not litigation.
Sorry, you're using the wrong term.
Well, whenever there's lawyers involved, there's briefs, there's look, I had to do it just to put a handicap ramp in my mother's house. You know, it was still, I had to get a lawyer, I had to go in front of the ZBA, it was a formal process. It's a quasi judicial process. But anyway, it's so if we want to, if somebody's opening up a 2,000 or 5,000 square foot establishment, they're not big bucks people. It's, so even $10,000 or $5,000 or $15,000 can make or break. They're deciding whether or not to open it or not, and.
So again, what are we trying to encourage? With 15,000 square feet, what are we trying to encourage retail-wise in that area?
No, we said 5,000 square feet.
No,
Mary's
I
talking
was
15.
just throwing out numbers.
Oh.
15,
So what's our vision of what we want in those districts?
So currently, it says only certain convenience stores and stuff like that, right? So are we only talking about those that are allowed right now, or are we expanding the scope of that?
We're talking about, possibly larger ones. But does it say anything about
Yeah, it
just
says-
retail use in general?
No, it does, it says convenience of the occupants of the immediate neighborhood, selling items such as groceries, prepared takeout food, toilet articles, cosmetics, candy, sundries, medications, newspapers, magazines, and ice cream provided. However, that any such retail store may operate only between the hours of 6 and 10. So I'm thinking it sounds like a convenience store, so we're not, there's already a restriction that it needs to be something like a convenience store. Are we expanding the scope, or are we just thinking of, for convenience stores, can it go up to 5,000?
Well, I would consider,
I would
any
consider opening it up.
retail use, that's just my opinion.
I don't think that's...
As long as it's not a big
Elaine?
box, a Walmart or something like that. So,
Yeah, no, I don't mind, like,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand,
So that's a-
what are we thinking about, sir?
I think we can think about either one, but.
Elaine, does the current definition in industrial A and industrial B for retail include all retail uses or just convenience store?
Just what's described.
Just described, okay. So we go back to what happened in the 90s when everyone went and did big box stores in places where were zoned industrial in a lot of communities. And this community decided not to allow that, all right? They decided that for whatever reason at that time. I think that in hindsight, that was a good decision. We see a lot of the big box stores, you know, really not being very healthy today in general.
Yeah.
Okay. The other issue that we discussed earlier was the fact that we don't want a big box and not enough people employed in that box, which is the whole thing with the self-storage restriction. And the reason why I brought up the categories and intent is because if we're changing the vision for this particular district, because retail really isn't an industrial use, then it's a bigger conversation. And we really need to dive in and say, okay, what about if we do some planned development guidelines and give a carrot to a developer? Talk about, you know, more futuristic ways of enhancing a district instead of enlarging parking lots because you think you're going to lose 200 employees. I think that this is a bigger conversation. It requires probably some kind of a special group to just study the different options for these districts. I mentioned before when we were talking about Franklin Road that if we want to encourage a good use at Franklin Road, we might want to encourage some kind of a public transportation system because it's out in the woods. You don't want to have, you know, hundreds of cars going there. You want to have some kind of semblance of respect to the other neighbors around it. But still, if you offered that to a potential buyer or tenant or something like that, maybe that's everything that they need. I mean, I was trying to watch the HCAM hearing with, what was the name of the company that's taking 97 South Street?
Lycan.
Yeah, so they chopped it off. They didn't give me the entire thing, but, you know, that particular company was looking for a TIF for future. But I didn't hear anybody ask them what other things that would enhance their business. I just heard, well, are you going to be a higher bio person than, you know, what we like here? So it's kind of like a negative, like a pushback versus, or how many people do you intend to hire from the local community? I mean, these are the things that would enhance our community instead of like say, okay, you're going to take our empty building. Well, that's great, but you don't want to pay all these taxes, and that's not so great. And like, what are you going to bring to us? I mean, I felt that the tone was not exactly like, hey, why don't we try to figure out, you know, other means to enhance your business? Because these businesses, they're looking for sites today. They're looking for lowering their costs and making more profits, making more sales, and getting the talent and being near the airports. Those are the two things that, you know, Lynn Tokarczyk is an expert at this. She's a wonderful, you know, she does this for a lot of companies, and we should be reaching out to her on a regular basis. But, so, I think it's a bigger conversation. I would recommend to the chair that we have some kind of, you know, a group effort that looks at. A charrette, maybe. But somebody, you know, coming up with some ideas. I mean, I came up with a public transportation. I mean, in India, by the year 2035, every vehicle is supposed to be an electric vehicle in India. I mean, that's fantastic. We have two main roads in town. One goes this way, one goes this way. And everybody else is sort of off those roads. We had a bus that was electric bus that just went two ways. We get a lot of people off the road. Just one idea, but this is the kind of zoning stuff. It's bigger than just, you know, is it 2,000, is it 5,000 square feet? I mean, I don't think that really makes a bean of difference. I really don't. And I think that we need to look at why we're trying to do that. If it is going to be supplementing, you know, a community style campus program, great. What's that noise? Any other thoughts?
I agree, and I'll make it short, just to echo. I worry about finding short-term answers for stuff where we ought to be thinking long. There's an empty building, let's fill it as quickly as we can, instead of thinking, what does that mean 5 years down the road? And so I would concur, go slowly, let's be really thoughtful about what we're doing and suggest.
Yes,
Yeah, I would like to suggest that as we look at trying to define these various things, that, you know, as Rhea was saying, to come up with some type of a study group that looks at how do these definitions enhance our master plan as it's put together. I mean, a lot of time and energy went into this master plan, and what are the zoning impediments to achieving this? What should we change and what should we encourage? So is Hopkinton open for business or closed for business? Are we open for residential development or closed for residential development? Those are things that I think zoning can be very helpful with, but it's not a quick study. I'm echoing what everybody's saying. This is a very intense discussion, but I think we have to begin with the end in mind to some degree, which says, are we trying to accomplish the master plan? And if so, what do we have to do to get from where we are to where we need to be?
Okay. Yep. Any further thoughts on this? Because really the redesign of the zoning advisory committee was in part to allow us to tackle bigger picture issues and longer term type of discussions. So not to say that a study group that's separate might not be a good idea in certain cases, but.
Well, maybe it's the study group as a whole, once we get past the deadline for town meeting.
Yeah. So I'd say we table this until we have some of that longer term discussion. Go ahead, Carol.
I agree with that entirely. The only other thing that I would suggest is that we look at industrial A and industrial B as two separate things. They're two very different areas.
I agree that they
two
need to be
different-
separate, but yeah, it doesn't mean we won't sometimes add to both at the same time, yeah, but yeah, I believe they're very different. And that's- okay. And so we're going to table that. We're not going to cross it off the list entirely. It's still going to be on the work plan for potential future discussion. The next item was allowing theaters, halls, and clubs by right in the business and downtown business districts. So theaters, halls, and clubs.
Well, nobody's
Are
building
different-
theaters anymore. Everybody has them in their own homes.
Well, I would
On the
love to
average
go to a
size
club. I would love to go to a club in downtown Hopkinton, but I don't want to drive home from it.
Right.
And I don't want to try to park there either.
Oh, we have
So we'll
Uber.
get you a bus.
We have Uber.
So can I ask, like, is there any specific reason why this came up as a topic? Does anyone know?
According to Scott, there's no specific demand saying, if we had this zoning, we would come.
Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is there a specific property that could really be this? I mean, I think of the post office could be a possibility, because they're going to get rid of post offices eventually. I mean, that's downtown business, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Center school turn into a concert hall?
There you go.
That's a good idea, because there's parking for that. CVS, I don't think we're going to see CVS
Center
move
school's not business.
in our lifetime, John.
What do you mean?
I will say, one area of business that came up in Zach a couple of years ago, we had people asking to extend it, is right in front of the middle school. I think that would be a horrible place for a club. So just looking at the map where the business districts are, I could picture, that's where the truck with the Christmas lights is, and,
Right.
and Select is in there. We do have the HCA, and they have a theater, and that's nice if something like that. But the idea of a club or late night music, and while it's zone business, it's a school and residential business. I don't know where this is all going to go. But I would be very worried about that little piece of business district being the home to a club.
Most of the business districts do abut residential properties.
True, but the downtown feels
Yeah.
like a place where you go, there's a restaurant, you can get a drink and then go to the theater.
Right, and then, right next door is somebody's house. So I like the idea of keeping the special permit process because it gives the ZBA an opportunity to hear members from the public, abutters, people in the neighborhood who can argue that it's detrimental to the neighborhood. And also we can impose, when appropriate, certain conditions. And as was brought up, it's, at the last meeting, it's fairly easy to get a special permit, but it's nice to have that safety net, especially since a lot of these areas are in residential neighborhoods, or abut residential neighborhoods.
A special permit doesn't transfer with the property,
No,
which I think is important in this particular item.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. I actually don't see that it would be highly likely to be built or a business like this opened in Hopkinton.
No,
But
I was just gonna say that after the downtown corridor project, you never know what's gonna happen.
it's true, good point.
What? Downtown corridor project, the beautification of downtown in a few years. So.
Yeah, when's that gonna start? 10 years ago?
Years ago. I got a problem. Wait, do we have a definition for clubs in our uses?
I don't think so.
So, yeah, because this gets into this gray area. Let's say Central Public House decides to put a band in their dining
Moose
room.
Lodge.
The dining room, does that turn them into a club? I don't know. I mean,
I think that the meaning was private clubs.
like Oregon Club, like in Southborough.
Vintage of.
Yeah, that's actually what they.
okay.
Yeah,
Thinking of.
that's why I said Moose Lodge.
That being said, it gets interpreted in the modern day, so.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right, so now I'm,
Yeah. I was gonna say something when you were talking about clubs, but I just figured I'd
hall would be
let
dancing
it go. Yeah, but that's what they meant, that was what it was, it was way
I'm
from way back
dead
when.
serious, I'd take a bus to go downtown, go dancing.
I don't really see the point of changing this to a by right. I do.
Okay,
Straw poll. Okay. Let's cross it off our list.
Chewing on this. Here comes Rita.
okay,
Okay, Rhea, why don't you tell us what you think?
okay, so, I mean, there's lots of discussion, online with different towns on, people who have bylaws and people who don't have bylaws. We have a bylaw that doesn't allow people to shove their snow out of their driveway and onto the street. We have a bylaw.
Yeah.
It's under sidewalks and streets. And I'm thinking that this potential bylaw could add to that section, which is, oh, by the way, you should shield your cans when they're not being put out. And they should be taken in 24 hours later after pickup. It's pretty simple. Otherwise, we get, cans that are all over the place. And what I see on my street is I see that people it started off with 1 or 2, and now there's like 4 or 5, and then it keeps going. Because it's like, some people have done it forever, and new people are coming into the neighborhood, and they're starting to copy those people. And I'm like, doesn't make any sense. And I know that in other neighborhoods, you would never see that. Like your neighborhood, John. You'd never see people.
No, I'm just afraid of my wife, I'll admit it.
It's just crazy. So, I mean, there are,
I never see it in my neighborhood either.
No.
I mean,
I copied a couple of bylaws from other towns, but, generally speaking, if you've got trash cans, they should be behind your building or in your garage or out of sight, and during the time that's not being picked up.
Somebody wanting to walk, especially in this temperature now, wanting to walk all the way up to the front of their house to throw something away and then walk all the way back in without pulling that trash barrel back in closer to the house, so they don't have to walk out the next time.
You just drop it when you're driving out of your driveway.
And then
Wow.
just, so shielding the cans and then having a time certain when they're supposed to be pulled in. I mean, the enforcement of this is everything, but
Ray commented on this one and said that it's outside of Zach's purview, that we'd have to do this one as a general.
Yeah, it would have to be a general.
That we'd have to do this as a general.
Do we not have anything in the general bylaws that would cover this?
nope. We don't. We have snow, but we don't have this. People come from other towns and they were behaved in those other towns that bring their behavior here. And they see someone not doing the right thing, they are increasing the habit. I mean,
Any other thoughts?
there's a lot of discussion on the net on this stuff, because it is crazy.
I understand what you're saying, but I'm trying to see the other perspective. Say, for instance, my neighborhood, usually it's gone in like an hour or two. So
Yeah.
if somebody has left it out, they're really not in town or something is going on, but they'll get fined for something that happens once in a while, rarely, when you go on vacation and stuff like that,
So that's where the enforcement comes in. We don't have an enforcement officer that can be everywhere all the time. So chances are, it's the one person that's going to be on vacation, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the fact that people have figured out a place in the front of their house, right on the street, and that's where they have their trash all the time, and recycling.
I honestly don't believe that putting a general bylaw in place to this effect will change people's behavior, because I don't believe that we'll be, we have the manpower to enforce this, as there's a lot of things that aren't enforced right now. But it's best dealt with by talking to your neighbors.
Well, I think that if you can point to the fact that this is a bylaw, then they were more likely to pay attention to it than if I just say randomly, oh, I've been only on the street for 14 years, and this person's been there for 40 years.
If I may, through the chair, why don't we bounce this, if, Elaine, if you could get, if I could, let's look at the ones that came from the other towns. Let's bring it to the Board of Selectmen meeting, and then let's bounce it off the zoning enforcement officer, because this is one of the things that happened to us last year when we were trying to do a more comprehensive, what we call it, the nuisance bylaw.
Oh, yes.
2 years ago, okay. Yeah, actually, I think we did twice.
We tried to,
Yeah,
we looked at it last year too.
Yeah, we tried to get it, yeah, well, actually, we tried doing it through the Board of Selectmen last year. We tried doing double the year before,
Yeah.
and it failed both times. And we brought it up again last year, and it got shot down.
So I'm just suggesting, though, that this go under sidewalks and streets section of our general bylaw, which is where the snow removal stuff goes. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's not like a whole new big section, it's just another addition.
Well, no, but I'm just talking about the enforcement, would probably go through zoning
Right.
enforcement officer, would probably be the one that has to do it.
Right.
And so that's why we end up passing it over for them, for their input, because it's only fair. But no, we'll just, because we actually have a meeting on Friday, a special selectmen's meeting on Friday, and another one on Tuesday.
Oh,
I'm not against the spirit of your idea, but just looking at the snow removal, the key difference is it says you're not allowed to put snow to impede traffic. If the trash cans are not in the way of the traffic or sidewalk, it's two kind of pretty different things. I don't know if they are. I haven't seen the trash cans.
I don't know your neighborhood, I'm
it
worried now.
impedes my beauty of my neighborhood, that's what it does.
That's a different thing, and that gets closer to what we struggled with the garbage in people's backyards, where people said, "But it's my garbage, leave me alone."
Yeah.
Again, the spirit of your idea, I'm completely in favor of. They're not exactly parallel. The snow, it doesn't say you can't put snow in the street. It says you can't put snow in the street to impede traffic.
Right. and that's a subjective.
And Carol
comment.
knowing the trick of how to get it out to your driveway without getting cold, that's another one that got me. I'm wondering about that, I'm wondering about your neighborhood.
It's just like you don't have any ability to go to a neighbor and say, hey, by the way, this, this really is not appropriate, without them saying, look, leave me alone, you know what I mean? And I feel like,
It is subjective, though. I mean, some people don't have an issue with it. Don't
I
have an
know,
issue
but
with.
that's what our town
No,
looks
and,
like.
and, you know, and some of these things may fly. I was just at
Nice.
over the weekend, I was at the Mass Municipal Association, and I went to a bunch of different, training sessions and symposiums and everything, and one of them was on the, plastic bag banning bylaws that go through. We have one that actually is doing ordinance through the, Board of Health. And then Nantucket was talking about what they're doing in some of the towns in Nantucket, where they're going through and banning single-use everything,
Yep.
even coffee cups. So I don't know how Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts are going to work in that case. You bring your own cup now or something. But over the next couple of years, they're looking on banning everything. So there could be an appetite in town for doing some, for more restrictive rules and regulations in order to help beautify the area. You don't know what the appetite is. So we'll definitely talk about it at the Board of Selectmen meeting. See what happens. Because, I have no idea. Things surprise the heck out of me nowadays.
Me too. But it wasn't this bad when I first got there. And now, like I said, there's a couple of people more and a couple of people more, and now it's like every other house has got their trash cans out all week long.
I'm gonna drive by and see now.
Yes, you should.
I know.
Oakhurst.
Taking a field trip.
That's my way home. I just hate pulling out of there. That's so scary to pull out
Yeah,
of.
yeah.
Oh, in the morning. It's, I don't try and head up to my house. I go down and then back
it
up.
probably is an issue in a couple of other neighborhoods as well, maybe on Downey as well. Any of these, like where the houses are close together, some of the people are older or whatever, but, I mean, even my 92-year-old neighbor across the street from me, she pulls in her can and puts it behind her house. I mean, it's like,
You don't help her? Go do the for her?
no, we try to clear her driveway on a regular basis, though.
So maybe Carol can teach her how to do it from her car and drop it out.
My trash cans go in every week,
Yeah, me too.
in a prompt fashion.
Okay, so we're going to suggest this to the selectmen to consider for a general bylaw? Okay. All right. On to suggested changes to the signs bylaw. Signage. Okay, so if you take a look at the,
I think it was here the last time this went through.
find this, okay, so,
Yes, come on, everybody's been here for this. We do it every 3 years,
exactly.
and it takes 3.
Okay, so, under sign regulations by zoning district, which is page 14 of our packet, 210-180. Then there's A, 1, 2, in the business, downtown business and rural business districts. And then there's letter B, lowercase letter B, under number 2, okay? Following me?
Nope.
And that is at the very top of page 15 in our packet.
What's the number on the bottom of the page?
Number at the bottom of the page is 4.
Okay.
Okay. Except as otherwise provided herein, 1 standing sign per lot shall be allowed, not to exceed 32 square feet in area. Lots that have frontage on more than one public way may have 2 standing signs on the lot, each along a different public way. The height of standing signs shall not exceed 10 feet. There was suggestion based on the discussion around this, in the design review board, around the, Central Public House sign and the downtown business district. And it had to do with the fact that they have a center pole and a sign that hangs out, on either side. And they're in a unique situation because their storefront isn't right on the public way, it's pushed back because of that patio. So signage that's on their building, which follows all the rules about signage directly on the building, is actually not visible from Main Street. So they needed a sign farther out. Makes sense. The problem was the height of the sign from the ground up. So there's no limitation in our bylaws as to saying you shouldn't have a sign that people are gonna knock their heads on. I think that's relatively logical, but
Oh, so a minimum of like 7
a
feet or
minimum
something.
of, from the ground of 6 or 7
Yeah, because this is
feet.
7.5 feet, that's what it was. There was nothing we could do about it.
Yeah. So that is the reason there's a suggestion to include or to add a sentence to the effect of the clearance from the ground. So,
Let me look it up.
thoughts?
Let me look up what,
Well,
let me look up what code is.
Most signs that would fall under this clause, in my mind, would not be signs that you walk under.
Right. But if they have, if there's 2 poles, there's one on each side, then, and, it's flush with the sign itself, it's not an issue. But they have 1 pole in the center with the sign hanging off of it. That's where it becomes an issue. And where, for instance, this is just an example from this particular situation, but this is partially on their patio and partially on the sidewalk,
Okay.
Right.
which is, the public sidewalk.
8
And-
feet.
8 feet?
8 feet, section 11.51, minimum height of ground, limitation of projection. Is 8 feet.
So, design review board should have been able to use that.
We didn't know that.
Oh, okay, that's why I just decided.
We didn't know that, and Georgia didn't know it, and
Oh,
so,
yeah, it's the same thing if you're building anything, or if you're putting up staging and anything like
Right.
that. That's all comes to the same
so,
thing.
the maximum height was 10 feet tall.
Right.
And so you're saying that the minimum is 8 feet tall?
If it's going over a sidewalk or projecting any
Right.
more than 6 inches off of a building.
So that's in our bylaw already.
No, it's in the state.
That's state.
It's a
State.
state. Yeah. So we could add it, or we could simply say, refer to the state laws.
Or someone could choose to do a sign with 2 poles or a monument sign.
Right,
instead.
exactly,
Or they could
which
move
would
the
not
sign.
have this problem.
In the Central Public House, did they move the sign so that it wasn't projecting over the sidewalk?
It's still projecting over part of the public way, but there's, I don't know if it's technically the public way, pardon me. It's, there's some bushes
Yeah.
underneath it.
Yeah.
Oh, so
Like
it's
a
not
little
there.
bit of
Okay,
mulch.
so it's okay
It's
then.
a,
Yeah,
So you can't, as long as you can't walk under it, it's,
well, you can walk under it if you go slightly into the mulch off the sidewalk, so.
Yeah, I thought it
Yeah.
was moved so that it was not over a non-pedestrian location.
Well, technically, the mulch and the bushes are non-pedestrian, but, and the part that's in, over their patio, as I was saying, it's their liability. If somebody knocks their head on it, so one would assume that they'll put something underneath it so people won't walk that way. But,
So, just to help me understand, design review said, we'd like you to make the sign higher so that people don't hit their head, and they said no?
they said,
They
we've already
can't.
designed it.
they can't,
We
they'd
do
already, yeah, we had this issue where the guy had fabricated the signs before he came to us. It's like, And this was the only place he could put it legitimately on the patio. It was complicated to kind of describe to you. She's looking at me. But I would say that out of all the signs that we've reviewed since we started reviewing signs, this is a one of.
Yeah.
So,
There's got to be a certain amount of logic, though, with people that are operating businesses, that you don't want to put a sign up that people are going to hurt themselves on.
Was my reaction as well. It's like,
Somebody could be a basketball player, we want them to get hurt.
Yeah.
Come to visiting our town.
but I do believe that there is some plantings that are planned for underneath it, which is going to prevent an accident, which is what we were trying to get. You know, poor guy, he's a restaurant guy, he was opening, he was like, I just need to open, you know what I mean? We were like trying to get that through as quickly as possible because, you know, everyone was anticipating that restaurant. So,
the sign looks nice, by the way. It's up now.
well, I don't think that we should really worry about this one.
I would agree. Anyone else? All right. Yeah, I think, that, you know, there's no way that our bylaws can capture every single situation that we're going to come across. And that's impossible. We do the best we can in most situations.
Okay.
All right.
So, John, we're going to skip that one. You okay?
Okay. Since it's a quick one, I'm going to skip ahead to the Osmond Overlay District amendments. This is, Elaine, I'm going to let you go through this because it's relatively straightforward.
Tonight, some draft modifications to section 210-156 of the Osmond district, which is Lacy Farms area. And it addresses two issues that have come up over the last year. And the first is as it relates to the age-restricted development that's under construction now off of Wilson Street and Legacy Farms North. The intent was to restrict residents to 55 and over, and the developer proposed language that was adopted a couple of years ago that said that no child under the age of 18 may be a resident of the development. However, some of these units, 25% of the units have to be affordable under state programs, and the state will not approve affordable units with this restriction. So from their perspective, language that says that one resident has to be 55 and over, but they will not approve any affordable units have restrictions said that no children, just, they can't do that with fair housing laws and so forth. So we're proposing to change this to mirror the definition of senior housing development in the Osmond. So in your packet was the entire Osmond district, and in the definitions section of that was a definition of senior housing development, which has this exact same language, that one resident must be 55 and over. So this mirrors the definition that's already in the Osmond district today.
Okay.
If we don't make this change, then they cannot provide 25% affordable, and they will not be in compliance with the zoning or the host community agreement. So it's an infinite loop that was created by this bylaw amendment that shouldn't have been adopted.
So what do you recommend?
So I'm recommending the language that was distributed today, which basically takes out no child under the age of 18 may be a resident, and says that at least one resident of every dwelling unit be 55 years of age or older. And town council has reviewed that, and they came up with the same language.
Now, does that mean that every unit in what has been planned as a senior housing development, every unit has the potential for children to be there? So we cannot make this limited to the 25% affordable units?
You might be able to, but when DHCD reviews the condominium documents and so forth, it's going to see that. And so that might also kick them out.
Okay.
So when I talked to the woman at DHCD, she said that language to the effect that we're proposing would be okay.
Okay.
So it would be the same as the other over 55 developments that we currently have in town. I don't think we have a problem with children.
So making it consistent with,
I'm curious, what does that mean we don't have a problem? Does that mean there are no kids in there? Does that
I don't
mean
know,
there-
I don't know if there are none, but there aren't very many, if there are. We don't
Sanctuary
know.
Lane has some.
Occasionally, there's a few.
But didn't Sanctuary Lane isn't that not a bound?
It's another affordable over 55 development, and they also, under fair housing laws, at times, if an over 55 buyer can't be found, they can be sold to people under 55 because of federal fair housing laws. That's the problem with over 55, which Judy Barrett has discussed with us in the past.
Because I know in real estate, you can't ask anything.
right. Okay.
So the proposal is to allow the affordable units to go forward. And if we don't do this, they can't provide the affordable units, and then we, I think, have a bigger problem.
I'd rather
I'm
small.
just curious, this doesn't affect the language, but is this the part of Legacy Farms that maybe 3 years ago at town meeting, we voted to allow to shift from commercial?
Yes.
Yes, and that's where this language went in there.
Yep.
Just wanted to make sure that that was the same.
Any other discussion?
So do we need a motion?
Yeah, I believe so.
I can go through the other one first, or if you wanted to wait, we could do that.
Oh, there's
we can do
another
them
one?
all at once?
You can do them both at once,
Oh,
or you can do them
beautiful.
separately.
Okay, well, no, let's go through the other one.
The other one is further down on the same page, and this addresses an issue that has come up with Fairview Estates, which is the retirement home on East Main Street, which is part of Legacy Farms. And when they were building the development, they included units for their on-site 24-hour full-time staff. And because there was a cap on the number of dwelling units in Legacy Farms, they could not include kitchens in those units. So the employees who are living there don't have a kitchen in their units. The operator of the facility has tried to make this work, but they're having a hard time keeping people who are willing to live there because they don't have an independent living situation in their own apartment. So they've been discussing with the town, how can we possibly fix this? And so one of the options that's been reviewed by town council is the language that's proposed, which would allow them to have an on-site apartment for a permanent live-in resident who is a full-time employee of the facility, and those would not count toward the total of the dwelling unit cap. And it's important that they do have, good on-site 24-hour staff at the location, and so they really would like to see if we can accommodate them in this regard.
So if we do this, are they just going to put kitchens in existing units, or are they going to build additional units? Or
I believe they would modify the units as they exist to put in a kitchen.
Yeah, I remember they came up, they discussed this last year with us, I believe. Yeah, they've gone through a bunch of different managers at, I remember it was at Fairview, because they don't have, basically, it's a hotel room that they're asked to live in, and there's nowhere for them to cook or anything for themselves.
And they do manage, they have a number of these locations elsewhere, and they have the full unit, and they're able to keep and retain good people.
Was the zoning for the Fairview site, was that a site that required a special permit for this use?
No, that was a commercial use.
It was a commercial use, so was that by right?
Yes.
There was no, okay.
are these permanent? Like, do these people that are living in these apartments, is that their only place that they live?
Yes.
Is it possible that they're coming with spouses or children or
It's possible, yeah. I don't know how big the units are, but it's possible that they would have at least a spouse. Partner.
And if they built them with kitchenettes or whatever they need in other places, why didn't they do it here?
Because it would have counted under the
And they
dwelling
wanted to
unit
get
cap.
as many of the other units as they could.
And they have
then
already-
come back to us and say, now can we have more?
Well, they'd already been allotted elsewhere too,
Mm.
at the time. I mean, it's either that or you could raise the cap. But I don't know if that's where the town wants to go.
Any other discussion?
I mean, the residents will only be an employee of the location. So they're asking the town to see if they can work on this.
What about this last part here which says, and one occupant of the apartment is a full-time employee of the facility? What if they're not an employee of the facility, but they're a private care provider?
No, this is for the, if I may through the chair, this is for the person that the manager, just speaking from Fairview, this is for the live-in manager or facility director.
Just the director, not for the
Right, not the
specific
individual.
care
Yeah.
providers.
No, because, being because there's a dining room for all the residents. So none of the residents have anything in their apartments.
Do you know how many units we're talking about?
It's either one or two.
Can we limit it in some way? So that I don't envision it blossoming, but,
just to be more defined,
We
what
could-
it
yeah,
is.
this sort of feels to me like we're giving them
I
carte
think
blanche to
Fairview,
do a
I
whole
think
bunch of
Fairview is a
stuff.
manager and
and
assistant
it-
manager, that's all they have. They have a very small staff.
Could limit it
Takes
to
care of their
two
place.
per facility.
I would
That makes me
be a
feel
lot
a
more
little better.
comfortable with that. I'm not opposed to the thing, but it just seems like it's too generous.
Yeah, we could do that.
All right,
I would be
with
comfortable
that
with that.
modification?
Good?
Because I wasn't getting it.
Okay, so where would that go? Continue to,
Limit
Provide
to 2
a-
units per facility?
It's limited, so provided that such apartment is located within the facility, one occupant of the apartment is a full-time employee of the facility, and there should be no more than 2 such apartments within the facility, within a facility.
within each
Something like
facility. No more than,
Well, there's only one facility, correct?
At the present, I mean, there could be more in the future, potentially.
for each facility.
All right.
All right, so do I have to read the whole thing? Okay, I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that in 210-166, intensity of use limitations, subpart A, to delete no child under the age of 18 may be a resident in any such, and replace it with at least one resident of every dwelling unit be 55 years of age or older. And then add in, at the end, just before B, no on-site apartment which provides a permanent live-in residence for 24-hour on-site responsible staff of a continued care retirement community or assisted living facility shall be deemed a dwelling unit for the purposes of this intensity of use limitation, provided that such apartment is located within the facility and one occupant of the apartment is a full-time employee of the facility, and no more than 2 apartments for each facility. Well, that's, you gotta fix that up for us,
Town
Ted.
council will work.
When I read the whole
The
thing.
gist is there, though.
Yeah, I think I said facility too many times.
I've already looked at this version.
Yes.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Okay.
There's one other potential change coming that town council is working on for the Osmond, and it has to do with the parcel that the town owns on East Main Street. and an international marathon center. So I'm still working on that. That'll have to go
That might have to
directly-
go straight to the planning board.
It'll have to go direct to the
Yeah,
planning.
okay. Okay. So this is the one that we are sending up to the planning board for their meeting next Monday. And that will be it for this particular town meeting.
Cool. I think you did a good job.
I think we all did. Okay, so on to our favorite topic. Zoning district definitions.
Oh, cool.
And I did, I liked that economic development self-assessment tool, Town of Hopkinton report that you put at the end of our packet. That was very, very helpful, very good. And actually echoed some of the discussion we had earlier about there being some working groups around economic development and defining exactly what we need.
Yeah, I mean, zoning's just one tool.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I'd kind of hoped to have a whiteboard or something along those lines for this kind of discussion about the zoning district definitions. Because I think it's, you know, it's a big issue and we need to look at it from a lot of different directions. So one is what are the classic definitions of words, you know, industrial, commercial, retail, business use, that sort of thing. For instance, a daycare facility, I don't know where it would fall in amongst those types of things. Or educational, or whether, you know, that would include that. And then, just because there's a difference between like the small I industrial, you know, what that means in, you know, in Webster, versus what we are calling our industrial A district, our industrial B district, and clearly defining the differences there. So, and then, of course, when we get to, you know, talking about our town, what can we learn from other towns, like Franklin, of course, and any, you know, any other information that we find from other towns. We can define what we see there now, and then we can also clearly define what we believe the past intent of these districts may have been. We won't be able to know for sure, but we can at least say, yes, we believe the intent was this and that. If there's definitions within the master plan, we should look at those as well. Okay, so these are the kind of the things I want us to just, instead of diving right into what should it be, what should we have for our future, just to have those definitions very clearly so we know what we're talking about, what exists in zones right now, which does not have to define the future, and then using master plan and other information, define what we are going forward. What do you think?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's most important to use the master plan more than, you know, we should always learn from the past, but we have to remember that the zoning was originally adopted in Hopkinton during the Korean War.
Yeah.
It's, you know, when we start thinking about it, it was in the early 1950s.
Yeah.
And so what we thought of as industrial and what we thought of as retail, what we thought of as business back then is a lot different now, with many people working from home and telecommuting and everything else, and you know, Amazon being the biggest retailer in the world. You know, but now Amazon is getting into brick and mortar. You know, they have these 1 million square foot warehouses, but they're doing smaller warehouses like what they did in Milford over the holidays. They took over the old TJ Maxx and the old Stop and Shop, and they were doing all their shipping out of there. So you have to start thinking what is the future going to bring.
Okay. So, business dictionary, industry, is manufacturing or technically productive enterprises in a particular field. Any general business activity or commercial enterprise that can be isolated from others, such as the tourist industry or entertainment industry. So, those are just the broad definition. Would you say commercial and retail are the same thing, or?
No.
No.
Okay.
Retail is under commercial.
Okay. Okay, so commercial, concerned
Commercial is a
with-
broad,
Commercial is basically
Broad.
commerce, anything.
yeah.
Trade.
And then under commercial, it's industrial, manufacturing, retail,
Okay,
office.
okay. So there, the Franklin definition kind of differs from that, for instance.
Are we looking at
Commercial.
Franklin right
So
now?
that's, that's a good,
Did you get it, Franklin?
These are Franklin, right?
so
You have good eyes.
clearly, I have to go.
These are just districts.
So commercial,
Well, they said.
clearly, it's just any for-profit enterprise. So we have to also define whether or not we're talking about nonprofit or for-profit in certain areas. But commercial, the textbook definition is for-profit.
Yeah, we have just a project Just Because up on South Street
Yeah.
right now.
And churches, of course, and so
Well,
on. Yeah. So that's also a point that we'll need to, I'm not saying that we include a textbook definition in our bylaws. I think we just need to know what the words mean. And certainly can mean a lot of different things, so, okay. Retail, the sale of goods to the public. It says in reasonable, relatively small quantities. And I assume that's, it's just to differ from the wholesale. Okay?
I really have to look on here, because I didn't print it out.
I really want a whiteboard. This is, I'm desperate to have this.
Or at least a
Documented.
laptop connect to a projector or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Just means you'd
So-
have to work from there.
No, I wouldn't mind doing that, but it's just, I don't think that this can be a very productive discussion unless we have some visual aids for some of these things that we're talking about. Okay.
Could use that laptop there.
Yeah, that's fine. Is it possible to have it set up for projecting right away, so we don't
Yeah.
have much lost time here? Okay.
Although, I'm not sure the document you want to project.
I don't have, I can start from scratch and just simulate a whiteboard where I'd be writing on it.
While you're talking.
Okay? Okay.
So I just have a quick question, just for
Yes.
clarification. If we look at the definition provided by Franklin for different zoning districts, it's not strict. Like, for instance, each, say, if it says industrial district, it says some commercial uses may be permitted. Like, so that seems like, are we sticking to strict definitions? Are we sticking to?
It was supposed to be the intent of the district. That was that's what Franklin says. And then after, so that is a title, intent is stated, and then they have a use table that tells you all the uses that are in that district. But when we're trying to add or subtract or change square footages and stuff like that, we have to sort of keep in mind what the intent of that district was. So that's why I'm not looking, I don't think we're looking for a strict definition so much as these are the kinds of things that are there or we want to have there, right?
Yeah, I agree. So, okay. So some of the terms that are used variously: commercial, industry, retail, business, office, professional. What are some of the other terms that are used in these generalized business districts? And I'm not saying in our definitions, but any definitions.
Well, the biotech business, biolab business is all,
Now, that's a particular type.
but it is it is under commercial, and it talks about specific needs of a building in commercial. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Mary?
So manufacturing and laboratory and,
So, yes, so manufacturing of whatever that name of that company was that is taking 97 South Street.
Like it.
Like, yeah, I don't know if I have a blind spot for it, but, you know, I mean, they're manufacturing, but they're a biolab business. So manufacturing's changed in the state. It's not putting bolts together so much as
No, I
it's
understand
doing,
that.
you know.
But manufacturing is a broad category that
Right.
falls under commercial. But we have also the nonprofit category, churches, some educational facilities are nonprofit. Okay. Under the commercial, yeah, business is so broad. I mean, business is everything. It's all of those. Because, right? So that's not a very useful term for us to use. Industry, retail, office, professional, manufacturing, laboratory, there's warehousing, right?
Entertainment.
Entertainment, good. Medical, right? Medical,
In terms of offices or,
I'm saying, anything that would
Production or-
fall under commercial. Anything, you know, broadly speaking, just terms that are used that are categorizations.
Recreation?
Recreation, entertainment. Would that be the same as entertainment, do you think, or different?
I don't know. In my own head, entertainment is Apex with go-karts and ball pits, and recreational might be a pool club, tennis courts. But I don't.
one's more active.
Yeah.
One's more active, that's right, okay. Is it ready? Okay. And that can be projected up there?
There it is.
Wow, look at that. Ask and you shall receive.
Okay, so I have,
Oops.
Whoops.
where am I?
Broke it, Mary.
Cable on the side.
Did I? Oh, yep. That's a touchy cable, isn't it? Okay, so,
Typos. I think our audience of 15,000
It's not-
is
oh.
watching this.
No pressure, though.
no pressure, that's right. This is not commercial. So, under commercial, we have,
I can put it here until you have something you want to put up there.
I don't know if
Oh, come
people
on, now
would
you take
rather
all the
look
pressure
at
off.
faces. No whispering.
I said, I'm glad you're typing and not me.
And I had no idea where to put something like daycare. I mean, it just really doesn't, to me, doesn't fit any of these categories. But I also wanted to, and I wish, let's see.
I wonder if
Is this just
educational
Word?
deserves its own and not just under nonprofit. Maybe daycare is under educational.
Yep,
You know, they all, whether it's
Oops.
real school or not, there's a whole lot of preschools that are really just daycare.
Support services.
Hmm.
support services. Not like. That's what you're saying? Okay, so under commercial, and then, I didn't put this into a table, but,
This is Natick. And so this is how they say purpose of this, purpose of that, which is supposed to be, this is the intent.
It's an old word version.
Yeah.
an old word version, okay, great.
This is important.
This was
Just talk about
clearer
that
to me.
more than what we're
Natick
talking
is
about
much
here.
more,
That's not what I need.
We just went down to the,
they get into the detail of like
I've used all the old
large-scale
word versions, I
development,
just have to
mixture
remember.
of office and commercial uses. with flexibility
Okay.
for creative land plan.
I was trying to
large parcel-
convert text to
parcels of land
table.
near major highways. That's a highway mixed use district. Is that an overlay? Well, we put in overlays. We've been creating overlays.
I still think that table has to be moved to the
Okay,
middle.
whatever.
They didn't do it
So
later. It didn't look
I'm
like
gonna,
it
I'm just gonna put it down here.
Doesn't look right.
Non-profit would
It's a
include
medium Friday.
I'm with you, Bob.
churches, some educational.
You'll see my feet if you move this table over there.
You come up here with us.
Oh, like,
You two
charities,
renegades.
also
Yeah,
nonprofit,
charities,
right?
but it's
Charities?
a fine working word for now.
Okay, so these are
Only
some
room
of
at
the
the big
terms that are used under commercial. And these are some of the terms, or categories, I should say, of things under the nonprofit area. Okay? Does anyone have anything to add? Industry, retail, office, professional, manufacturing? We're not going to use all these terms, we're going to group them together, just so you know. Restaurants, food.
Oh, yeah.
Were you waiting for one of us to say that?
Getting
You hold on
hungry.
to that for so long. The reason I said charities in quotes, if the American Heart Association wanted to move in, it feels like that's office jobs, high-paying jobs. It's not quite charity, so I don't know what that is.
Medical?
I don't know. I mean, they don't do research and stuff, right?
No.
Or, I don't know, that's one that popped into my head. Didn't they used to have a place right off of the Mass Pike there for a while?
Yeah.
But that kind of nonprofit, I think that
Right,
fit my vision of what we would want in some commercial. I just don't know what to call that right now.
yeah.
I don't think we should get hung up on the word nonprofit or profit. They're all businesses.
I just wanted to categorize, since we were saying commercial,
Right.
commercial is by definition for profit. So, and
Yeah, but
And we clearly have nonprofit uses
Right,
as well.
right.
Yeah.
So I-
But we don't have, we don't have to,
Yeah.
go crazy with it. Okay,
I think it's worth working with the labels, though. If we are going to say commercial means something, I don't think
Yeah.
the World Wildlife Fund is commercial, but World Wildlife Fund is business and how it runs and how
Right,
it pays.
right.
yeah, exactly.
So I think it's
So,
worth wrestling
but,
with the times.
But some educational facilities that are nonprofit are still, desirable.
Right,
Yeah, so-
right.
Sorry, I'm just thinking, if it's a college or a university, we don't have a category, should it be a separate educational category, or would it come under something
So-
else?
We could have it under educational just broadly. But there's some educational under commercial, so there's for-profit, educational, and there's nonprofit educational.
That'd be
And what
the
about-
Kaplan Test Prep or something like that? Would be
Yeah,
the
yeah,
for-profit, right?
something like that.
How about hotel? We already have the overlay district up in two of them.
Funeral homes?
Well, that's a good one.
Dying business.
Because we're dying to get there.
Is that retail or is that different?
Last guy to let you down.
Okay, so let's see if I can spell this. Did I get it right?
Yeah.
That would be just medical at this point.
Okay, yeah, you're right, it's medical. Okay, so that's what I suggest we do now, is like group them together. And these will be the terms that we use, so we all know what we're talking about with one another. So we're not constantly debating the meaning of words when we're discussing this, okay?
So the word industry should say industrial.
You're right. Okay. I personally tend to group office and professional together. To me, that means the same thing in terms of use of a building. Okay.
I think we can all agree on that one.
Really?
Yes.
I just see them as being.
Well, would professional, then again, would
That's-
professional, could that be acupuncture? Could it be
I see
massage
professional
therapy?
having-
Or would that be under medical?
Acupuncture is medical. So it could be a professional medical building.
Yeah, when when I'm thinking
Hairdresser.
professional in the term of zoning, this is, again, this is just me in terms of how I visualize it. I don't think of professional being the definition of, okay, that's law and medical, you know, that's a professional degree or is a professional occupation. But for a zoning use, it's just an office. They're in an office. They're not doing anything other than sitting in an office and doing office stuff.
Well, no, but a barber or something like that, or a hairdresser.
Yeah, that I would consider more services.
Oh, we have services in there?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'll be quiet for a few more minutes.
So from the point of view of how they're using a building, so medical is different because they're doing
Appointments.
stuff like that. And an office use would be anything where you're just sitting in an office doing office stuff, calling people
So
coming
you
in
wouldn't,
to
you
meet
wouldn't
with
refer
you.
to a medical office as a professional?
It is professional, but
Well, to me, that's.
for the use of the building, medical
Yeah, 'cause, yeah,
is
'cause we
slightly
separate-
different.
We separated out a couple years
But
ago.
that's why I see them as being different. If it's an office building, it doesn't generate a clientele that's gonna come to you. Whereas,
Well, yes.
in my mind, if it's professional, it's gonna have traffic.
Okay, so we
Outside
could
traffic, so-
just not use the term professional at all. We could say there's the office use, and then there's but it's medical and what else that's like medical generates a clientele that's coming in all the time. So, medical including,
Well, I know I go to my insurance company,
yep.
they have an office.
But they don't have laboratory type space.
No.
But they do have people coming in, is it,
Just to register a car or something, yeah.
chiropractic?
But now you can do everything there, get your license plates and all that stuff.
So, won't all that come under the, like a service provider? They are all service providers.
Yeah.
Insurance, HR, tax providers and.
Lawyers.
That's true.
All that.
ETC.
What's that? Is that a rough?
Just covers,
Oh, I thought you said ATC. I was like. So, okay, funeral homes, also a service provider. All right. So we'll avoid the sticky term professional then. Industrial, retail is obviously.
crematoriums?
Includes. It really-
Museums.
On a dispensary.
Yeah.
A museum in Natick.
Museums. Nonprofit?
I wouldn't get hung up on the nonprofit versus profit, even though the term commercial definition that you came up with says it's for profit, because with regard
Okay.
to zoning, it doesn't really matter. It's just what you're
Yeah.
using the space for.
Fair enough.
Because what Madame Trousseau, that's profit.
I wouldn't call it a museum.
They do. Wax museum.
Yeah, but
So,
anyway,
just to
I think, Rhea, if an end product is, this district is designed for these uses, we can say commercial, manufacturing, and nonprofit, and then we have defined what some of those nonprofits mean. I think that's the reason to keep them there, but maybe I'm misunderstanding your concern.
We're talking about the use as it relates to the property,
Right.
not so much whether it's for profit or not for profit. Does that make any sense? It's
Yes.
more about, I mean, yeah, when we get into a deeper dive on this stuff and we say, okay, do we really want to take, I don't know, 100 acres on South Street and give it to a not-for-profit and not collect any taxes? you know, that's a whole different discussion, but that doesn't come into the intent of the district, if you understand what I'm saying. What we're trying to do is, we're trying to figure out, okay, so we've got industrial A and industrial B, and over the years, those districts are starting to move around a lot, and they're not really like that clear industrial use that used to be what it was for. And so by going through this exercise, I hope you all appreciate what this exercise is, because it gets back down to where are we going with, you know, zoning in the town.
Yeah. I find that, you know, by keeping the nonprofits all together here, we might be able to use a shorthand in some of this and say, okay, all nonprofit uses, you know, that kind of thing. But we also know that the tax benefits may be different in nonprofit uses, so. But it's just a useful thing to have things grouped together, so we don't have to list 5 things.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, because, no, we were just saying, you know, to give a 100-acre parcel to a nonprofit, but if it's like Ted was just saying, like Sierra Club or something, or an entity that could actually enhance the brand of Hopkinton, you know, it could be something that's like, oh, it would be great, you know?
Yeah, there's two sides, right? There's the tax revenue, and then there's also the kind of jobs we create.
Right.
We could have a tax revenue intense business that creates nothing jobs, and we could have a non-tax revenue. But I like my World Wildlife Fund better than the American Heart Association. If they made this their world headquarters, I don't know what our tax revenue would be, but that's a heck of a brand thing. It's
Absolutely.
real jobs with real pay.
Right, I'm just saying it has got nothing to do with zoning, though.
Right, but I think that after all of this, so we start looking at what's there, but then what Ron was showing me was, you know, after this, we've got to get into the setbacks, the you know, all the nitty-gritty of some of this zoning and you know, what we're going to do in each district. You know, just the nuts and bolts of it, because it's beyond this. Whatever somebody puts there, you know, it's just a building with 4 walls, but we have to make sure there's enough parking, there's enough screening, there's, you know, all the other stuff that's important to the look and feel of a town.
So, in industrial A, we currently have, I think we have all of that except for entertainment going down, and we have daycare, don't we? We have restaurants, I mean, we have hotels, we don't have a funeral home. I think we have everything up there
We don't
except
have
for.
John's crematorium either.
So that's kind of the core reason why I wanted to do this, because it's like a free-for-all.
Right, yeah.
Are we trying to figure out what we want to do in industrial A? Like, the intent of the district would be to be an enterprise zone, industrial A, okay? An enterprise zone that would go along with companies that were energy efficient and allowed for reduction on our, because one of the things that I read in that thing that you put out, the tool, was that we don't really have any excess water, sewer. We have no excess in those areas.
Right.
And so that was an eye-opener for me, because all the other towns that they measured did.
Right.
And so, I mean, there's a way to skin that cat, is, you know, to give particular companies an enhanced density for, you know, a reduction in services if they do meet some benchmarks for those services. I mean, those are the kinds of things that I would want to see that zoning kind of embrace. Make sense?
Well, we do have enough water in sewer in certain areas. That's just the point, is that we don't have, our sewer districts didn't grow with the areas, some of the areas of town that grew. So it's one of the things that has to be looked at is where do we grow our sewer system to further enhance what's going on?
I don't know the background, I just know
And
what.
water's one of those, in town, it all depends on, Elaine smiled for a second there too, because it all basically depends on who you ask when it comes to the capacity. Because at one point, when we had a company up on South Street that was using lots and lots of water, they left. And now, actually, we didn't sell much water last year, especially since it was a rainy summer. You know, as a town, one of the products we sell is water, and we didn't sell much water last year. So we have the capacity right now.
And just the amount of water that the town can provide is limited by the town's Water Management Act permit that's issued by the state. So you can't just distribute as much water as you want, it has to be permitted.
But we are
Right, but I
pushing,
mean.
we are pushing to
to be
get more from the
sustainable.
state.
But yeah, the easiest, most sustainable thing is reduction of water. That's by far the easiest way to hit certain benchmarks. But I'm just saying, if we looked at, and I think that this requires, a couple of study groups. If we look at, trying to figure out how the zoning's gonna, change and evolve, we should have some idea of some of these tools that other communities are using to attract the businesses we want.
Yes, I agree. Okay, I'd like to get back to this and then wrap it up for tonight. So just see how far we can get on this. So commercial being broadly defined as everything non-residential.
Correct.
So we'll just call that non-residential. Okay? Everything, and then nonprofit is just a subcategory of that, okay?
So can I just
But then
ask
there's
a quick
mixed
one?
use.
So, when we're thinking industrial, are we just thinking manufacturing?
No.
How is the different, what is the distinction between industrial and manufacturing?
Well, and that's one of the things I wanted to talk about, in terms of, again, not in terms of our definition within our bylaws, but just the term industrial. Is that something, anybody, come out with what you believe industrial means? And yes, you can Google it. I did earlier, too.
Where product is produced.
A product, but that, again, is that manufacturing, So are they synonymous?
Because for instance, why I'm asking that is, say for instance, currently in our industrial zone, say for Dell, it's a software manufacturing thing. Software comes under office as well.
Right.
So is it office and manufacturing?
Right.
That's what comprises
And that's
industrial?
a very
or
good
that is
question,
industrial?
because that, yeah.
We can manufacture and sell software.
Yes, which is not producing a widget. It is producing something.
And most industrial buildings will have a section of office to it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But in that case, it is all office. It is an industry that manufactures things, but it is all office space. It is not anything that resembles a manufacturing floor, because it's software. So. So I think we can agree that laboratory kind of is in a category of its own, right? All of us seem to agree on this category of office, just being general office space that does not generate a lot of client traffic. Okay? I mean, obviously clients come to see you, but not numerous ones every day. Okay? I was starting to group together some service providers, high traffic, service providers, low traffic, but I don't know that.
I think daycare
This
is
is-
pretty high traffic.
But it's only it's 2 times a day, rather than all day long. But you're right, that I think these groupings might not be
No, I
useful.
think a lot of daycare is maybe 3 times a day. They kind of have a midday shift.
Yeah.
Right? There's before school, then there's mid-school, then there's after school. And then there is after your work is done.
So more up
Or
here.
different drop-off pickup times.
churches are kind of in that low-traffic category.
It's too bad.
I think as we have here in the past with Zach, restaurants later on is going to need to be broken apart.
Yep.
The other part of this is the truck delivery slash how many visits, what are they distributing? Or is it, is it just deliveries once or twice a day, or is it constant?
Constant backup alarms and.
Well, then that gets into some of the nitty gritty that Ron was talking about with the, with all the other stuff, and, where's the trash gonna be?
In the dumpster.
Yes.
Not at the curb.
Not at the curb. And screening around it.
So I'm just putting up here at the top the things that we want to consider, for.
Right, these are the variables of each of these
Exactly.
uses.
One thing I would like to add to the top there is uniformity of uses or buildings within each of the zones. So residential, uniformly residential, the industrial, commercial, there's a uniformity to that area.
You mean a visual uniformity?
Well, size, scope.
Well, I would agree with you, except for right now, mixed use is hot as a pistol. And that is how people are building and planning development today.
He didn't say he wanted it uniform, he just said uniformity as a category to discuss.
All right.
Mixed use is allowed, then, that, it's going to be in this area.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, the state and the.
Say
and
degree
federal
of
are
uniformity,
pushing it.
how about-
The state gives grants now
More sense?
to do your studies in order to do live, work, and play.
Okay. All right.
We're so good for it too, right at that corner.
Laboratory, warehouse, manufacturing. So we still have to figure out whether or not we want industrial manufacturing synonymous, or if we can clearly define what the differences are.
so industrial is over manufacturing, because it could be distribution.
Residential.
And,
Which is warehousing,
right, which is under industrial.
right.
Manufacturing is different than industrial.
Well, then, we don't need to use the word industrial, because that's a higher level category if we want to use the very specific terms underneath it.
So Ron, that thing that Ron was showing me, New York breaks it down into 3 categories: industrial, commercial, and residential.
And you see, commercial, you were saying, is the overall.
Well, yeah, I mean, commercial is anything that's not residential. That's basically what it comes down to. But yeah, New York is probably right on, because the commercial in New York is going to be all those retail stores as well.
Yeah,
So,
but
And
retail is a
industry
category
is
of
the-
commercial.
Well, manufacturing buildings
right,
and things with smokestacks was what it used to be.
that's
To
right.
say industrial to me is dirty.
Yeah.
Old.
Yeah, that's why I was saying we have to really
It's a
start, and like, so maybe what we're doing now might be more up to date. I don't know, because there really aren't smokestacks anymore.
And maybe it's not considered an industrial zone anymore.
Right.
That's the nut of the matter.
Yeah, because when I was
But
up
I'm
at,
not sure it was
when I was up
ever
at EMC,
industrial
they've
by
actually
my
built
picture of
things.
industrial.
Oh,
Yeah,
possibly, you're right, because the big buildings that were built up there were built as, small warehouse distribution centers.
after 495.
Right.
Any other groupings that we can do? Or do we need to leave these categories?
I understand the groupings in the top, the things to consider, not just the tax revenue, something like amenities that makes our town more attractive, like raises the value of our town, that we have these things. We have a restaurant with so many stars, or something like that, the brand value of this town.
Like it brings additional, is it image, or is it
I would
bringing
think
additional
image,
business
but-
in?
Yeah.
Image?
Something like an image, like some, in my head, I think Hopkinton is a happening place because what would you fill? Because it has a cool restaurant, it has a nice place, like what?
Quality of life.
Yes, like, maybe like for instance, a concert hall would improve the quality of life or the image.
Recreation.
You took off support services, I think, but what about like gas stations and things like that?
No, I didn't take it off, I put it up there.
Okay.
So,
You'd consider that retail?
yep.
What about Harvey's and the Sawmill? Where would those be? Would that be industrial? So it's not
It would be.
manufacturing.
It's not manufacturing, but it's, yeah.
It would be industrial.
I mean, technically, a lot of things can fall in 2 or 3 different categories.
Right.
Yeah, so, we,
But the Sawmill is retail too. so-
yeah, it's can be retail, it can be service
Services.
provider, it can be, yeah, industrial. And then, the terms light industrial or heavy industrial are used, by people, and generally speaking, I mean, I think that makes people think of, okay, not so dirty, not so many smokestacks, things like that, but still industry. But again, not clearly defined, right? Okay.
Well, all of it is definitely very subjective in terms of the picture it paints in each
Absolutely.
person's mind.
Okay, so I think, let's see, restaurants, let's not subcategorize that
I'm
right
encouraging
now.
that right now.
Now,
At some point,
okay, and then what I'm envisioning is that we have a matrix with these categories, and then we have the thing about, truck traffic, client traffic, and do high, medium, low kind of thing. So we can see in a matrix what each of these brings to the immediate area. And then
Signage also.
yeah, absolutely. So we need to define what the top level of our matrix is, what, I'm sorry, I keep doing, these items, and any additional ones we
Power.
want to talk about. Power, water usage, that sort of thing, yeah. Okay. Okay, so it's, can you save this and get it to yourself and me? Okay, quickly, has everyone reviewed the minutes?
yes.
Do I have any edits?
I was present and it says I was absent, so if you can, thank you.
Well, that's not good.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. I looked at it, I was like, wait, she was here? I thought she was here.
No, I forgot, I had to go back to the video to make sure I was there.
was it really there?
So we looked at the video. Because I was like, did I miss the meeting or something? I don't know, but
We're too quiet.
see, that's why I have to
That's why I
speak
come
up.
in 5 or 10 minutes late.
Yeah, then they know
Mr. Gattino arrives at this time.
That's right. Okay, motion to approve,
So moved.
second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? All right.
Thanks for moving back, because I didn't know whether I should be watching you on the screen or looking down at you.
Very confusing.
I was thinking how we looked on TV with all of us looking like.
We're not really set up for a good performance. Okay.
Are we still on?
Yes, we are. Next meeting is, let's see here, February 4th